Hey everybody, KC here. So one of the perks of doing what I do is every once in a while publishers send me books. They send me a lot. I get stacks of books every year, and some of them I read. Some of them I love. Some of them I read and not so great about. And some of them I just put aside because I'm just not interested. And yeah, there's things I like and there's things I don't like, and there's little enough time. I'd rather spend time reading the things that I really want to read. Um, and not that long ago, I got this book from the publisher. It's called A Golfer's Carol by Robert Bailey. And I read it. Well, first of all, I didn't read it to start out. I said, I'm not a golfer. What do I care? But I decided, I give it a shot. You never know. And I ended up loving it. And it's a terrific book. It's a fable. Has elements of Tin Cup and elements of It's a Wonderful Life and has elements of Field of Dreams, and those are all three movies I love. So it ended up I really liked it a lot, and so I reached out to the author, a guy named Robert Bailey, who's an attorney. He's written several legal thrillers. Actually, he has two different series going. One is featuring a law professor named McMurtry and a law student named Drake. And apparently there's three or four in that series. And he's just started another series with a character named Bocephus Haynes. It's again another thriller. So this is totally a totally different kind of book for him. But I said, I got to talk to this guy. He's a writer. He's a lawyer. Seems like an interesting guy. It's an interesting story, and I wanted to find out a little bit about what was behind it. So I reached out to him. We did a little Zoom interview. Some of the internet connection is a little dicey, but I hope you'll stick with it because I think it's worth it. So enjoy my interview with Robert Bailey, and I will put a link to where you can buy the book at the end of the interview. So enjoy. Robert Bailey, welcome to Morning Newsbeat. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin. It's an honor to be here.
So when I was reading the book, and one of the things I found about The Golfer's Carol is that I loved it, and I'm not a golfer. So I think it has a broader appeal than certainly than just the people who play golf. Um, One of the things that it occurred to me as I was reading it is it sort of struck me as Tin Cup meets Field of Dreams meets It's a Wonderful Life. Three, by the way, movies I love. Would you buy that as being a pretty good assessment of it?
Yeah, I think so. I think those stories all have inspirational elements to them, and I think you can find a little taste of each of those stories in this book.
So, give me your elevator pitch for the book, and this way I get you to describe it, and I don't do any spoilers. So,
Sure.
this is probably stuff you don't want people to know.
This is the book, The Golfer's Carol, and The Golfer's Carol is the story of Randy Clark, who is on his 40th day, and he is very much anguished. He's got a lot of tragedy going on in his life, involving his family, and he's really unrealized as a person, and is contemplating suicide. And he's visited by four ghosts, so to speak, the champions he's looked up to his whole life, who all happen to be in the arena of golf. And through the visits with the ghost, he learns four powerful lessons that help him realize he does have a valuable life.
So, without being overly personal about this, was there a not that you got to that point, but was there a precipitating event in your life where you said because you've written thrillers, but this is a new category for you?
It is, and this story is deeply personal to me. It's kind of hard to tell the how it came about without going into some things. The book was originally going to be a nonfiction book. My dad, my brother, and I were going to take a golf odyssey. We were going to play the home courses of Bobby Jones, Ben Hogan, Arnold Palmer, and Jack Nicklaus. And we played East Lake in Atlanta, which is the home of Bobby Jones. Had a fantastic time. And I got some notes from being there, and I was thinking, I'm going to make this, my first nonfiction book. And my dad ended up getting stage 4 lung cancer, and so we weren't able to do the rest of the trip. And he ended up dying 10 months later. Had a horrible prognosis. And while he was diagnosed, my wife also was diagnosed with lung cancer, a much better form. She had stage 3 and was able to have surgery. And so my dad died in March 17, and right around the Masters of 17, I had curative surgery. And so out of all of that, I guess I tried to take my dad's golf odyssey, and turn it into a fable that would help people going through difficult times, like I went through. It was very much therapy for me to write, and I hope that it will be maybe therapeutic for people to read.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, first of all, we're having this conversation as the Masters is being played in fall for the first time, and people are going, "That's what the tree looks like in November." Um, but it also struck me as sort of timely in the sense that this is a character who's sitting there saying, "Man, life has just not turned out the way I expected it to, and life has been sort of turned on its head." And there's a lot of people out there right now who feel that way, having nothing to do with a disease, well, not a cancer, but because of the pandemic. I mean, right?
Sure.
The pandemic has changed a lot of people's, and a lot of people out there are depressed. And it's striking. This is sort of a kick in the butt, maybe a little bit, for those of us who are sort of going, "Oh man, life sucks these days."
It is, obviously when you write a story like this, you don't know what's going to be happening when it gets released. But I do hope that in this probably the weirdest year that I'm ever going to experience, just so many people are suffering right now, emotionally and physically. And, I hope that this story is the kind of story that will, I don't know, just be a story that makes you feel good, that you can take something from it, that whether it makes you feel something about your dad or your mom, or just a game of golf, which can be so personal to people. I watched a segment today. I turned the computer around so you can get the picture in the background. It's the 13th hole at Augusta, which is my little tribute to the Masters, which starts today. But this book is set in the backdrop of the 1986 Masters, and that turned special to me. I watched it with my dad. Jack was Dad's hero, and when Jack wins and hugs his son Jackie, and I really thought that was the most perfect sports moment. I cried when I watched it then. And then last year was Tiger won and hugged his son. I cried then too. I'm a crybaby, but it's those moments in sports, it's hard to capture them sometimes. They resonate far beyond just the golf course or the baseball field or whatever.
Did the book require a ton of research? I mean, you are a lawyer, so you're right. You write legal thrillers, so I suspect to a great degree that sort of comes naturally to you. Did this require a great deal of research, both in terms of the golf as well as it's 1986? So there's things you needed to root in
Right.
that reality, which is very different than 2020 reality.
It was, I wrote the first draft without doing any research because I'm kind of a kid from the 80s, and I played golf in high school and in college. And so I was very familiar with the legends of Hogan, Nicklaus, Palmer, and Jones. And so I didn't want to get too paralyzed by getting the facts, getting too concerned about that when I wrote the first draft. Now, when I went back and revised the story, I did fact check all of the key points so that I made sure I didn't mess anything up. But because I just grew up hearing those stories, and some of the stories like Palmer's shot, to open the final round of the U.S. Open at Cherry Hills where he drives the green. That was kind of fun, nostalgic for me to write about because I've heard about it my whole life. And to write about Ben Hogan hitting golf balls at Shady Oaks by the tree, which he was known to do, is kind of the iconic picture you get in your mind, or at least I get in my mind when I think of Hogan. And so to be able to incorporate that into this story, this fictional story, was really fun for me. So I didn't have to do a whole lot of research, but I didn't take it for granted either. I did go back and fact check years and dates, and just so I didn't mess something up that a real golfer would know.
I don't know if it's too much of a stretch, but as I was reading it, one of the things that, and again, I have not read your thrillers yet, although I'm going to. one of the things that I wondered and if you see it this way, that it might have in common with a thriller is that, um, much of what we think we know, we don't know. And things are very rarely what they appear to be. And to me, that was certainly you know, the perception of your lead character, your protagonist. There's a lot he doesn't really understand and a lot he doesn't know. And it isn't a kind of a voyage of discovery, which is often what is the case for protagonists in legal thrillers, right? Or detective novels or
Yeah,
whatever. It's picking up the clues and sort of and putting them together.
no question about it. I think there is some synergy between the thrillers that I write. I've written this. The Golfer's Carol is my sixth novel. The previous five were all legal thrillers. And those books, the McMurtry and Drake series, is my first series of four books. It follows an older professor who is in the twilight of his, legal career. It comes back and tries some cases, and those stories are all. I try to create a theme in each of those stories. Even though it's a thriller and it moves fast, you want to have the book be about something, and so themes of redemption and resilience play out in those stories as well. And in my recent thriller that came out a few months ago, Legacy of Lies, same thing. You want the story to be about something, in addition to hopefully being very entertaining. And I think because I think of it that way, and I think most thriller writers do, it wasn't too much of a stretch to go into a different genre. For me, I just always love those types of stories. I mean, Field of Dreams, end of the book when he plays catch with his dad. I mean, how can you watch that and not just be choked up? I mean, those are the stories that I've always loved. I'm a sucker for all the Rockies and Rudy, and I love those kind of books and stories. So I always wanted to write one, and so it just came about to where this one just kind of fell in my lap. The story did through what we went through.
So you're a lawyer first, then became a writer. Who are your writing heroes? Who are the people that you read and said, "I want to do that"?
Yeah, well, when I was in high school, John Grisham was just coming out with his first few novels, and so he was certainly a big inspiration. And I remember reading Time to Kill and kind of wanting to be the main character, who was a lawyer. And when I was in high school, I read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which is a classic. And I think the combination of reading Grisham and Harper Lee, probably made me want to be a lawyer and a writer. And then my modern day heroes, I love Michael Connolly. I love his stories, the Lincoln Lawyer and Harry Bosch books. And one of my great heroes died this year, Winston Groom. He wrote the novel Forrest Gump. And Winston Groom was real helpful to me when I was trying to get published. I didn't know him, and he gave me a blurb for my first novel.
And I said, and he actually, yeah, I mean, he gave you a blurb for this book too. So
gave
yeah,
me a blurb for this book too. Yeah, it was a really wonderful blurb. So the writing community is a neat group of folks, and so it's been pretty cool to get to meet some of my heroes.
Do you have the new Connolly Lincoln Lawyer book on your desk? Because that's my next one.
The Law of Innocence. Yeah, I can't wait to dive into that one because he just never. I mean, every book I've read by him is good. So,
when you were going through the writing process, how important was it that non-golfers like me get it? Was that something you had to kind of pay attention to as you went through to say, "Ooh, I can't get, no pun intended, too down in the weeds on this one"?
it was very important, and I think a lot of times what happens between first draft and revisions is some of the golf that perhaps was really entertaining to me, I trimmed down a little bit because some of my early readers, I always have the book read by some folks that I trust, kind of got bogged down in some of it. And so part of the challenge was to, for me, sometimes you have to kill your darlings to make the story flow better. And so I did that a little bit, but I think it was a success in terms of turning it into a story that isn't something that somebody will read it and go, well, I don't understand what that means. I'm not a golfer. I don't think there's much of that in there. And I think writing legal thrillers, the same thing happens in most books. If you get too bogged down in legal stuff and the legal jargon, it can be boring. And so that's always been part of the process with my other books. And so I knew it was going to be part of this process. But another thing that made this a little easier is I knew it was going to be a shorter book. And I knew that it really was about Randy Clark and his relationships with his father, with his daughter, with his wife. It was really more about his personal feelings about himself and his challenges, and it's all sort of worked into this, golf angle. So the golf is really the backdrop and the window dressings for a human tale.
So pretty much my last question. What kind of golfer are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Okay, so I used to be pretty good at golf. Yeah, I played in college, and I was a pretty straight driver of the ball. Nothing fancy. I didn't make a whole lot of birdies, but I could keep it in play and shoot in the 70s, high 70s. Now, as an older guy with 3 kids, don't get to play as much. I just hit it everywhere. I can shoot 75 or I can shoot 95.
Okay. So here's my real question then. So how would you compare your strengths and weaknesses as a golfer to your strengths and weaknesses as both a writer and as a lawyer?
Well, I think, I'm a positive thinker. I like to think positive. And I think when you play golf, whether you shoot 95 or 75, if you hit that one pure shot, you're going to come back. And I think persistence and positive thinking and maybe just a little stubbornness, crosses over from golf into practicing law, where you have to be very, you just have to be determined. And then in the writing, I can't tell you how many no's I heard along the way before I got published. And so it's just a subjective thing. For me, it was really just, I know there's going to be a yes out there at some point. So it finally happened. And now, 6th novel, and it never gets boring and never gets old. It's, I still get the books in the box when I come and I smell them, and, that's exciting.
It is. Well, listen, I really appreciate this. And again, for my audience, I love this book. I think it's just a delight. I'll be honest, it was a little bit of an unexpected delight, because I said, golf, am I really going to like this? And I liked it enormously. And I totally get what you say about, even though I'm not a golfer, I've heard people say that their entire lives on the golf course have been in search of that one great shot they hit like 30 years ago. Oh, right. And that have never been able to recapture.
Yeah, it is certainly a process like that.
Well, listen, thank you again for doing this. Good luck with the book. I hope you sell lots of copies, and I look forward to reading some of your legal thrillers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. Appreciate it.